Senate Chamber. Signed. 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 Senate chamber. Sound. 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 Senate chamber. Sound.
We're just waiting on Marion. I haven't got access to chat, so Marion's confirming. That's it.
Okay. Welcome everybody to PAC meeting. Just before we proceed through the main meeting, I just need to advise you that you'll need to elect a chair for today's meeting. Unfortunately, the chair and the deputy chair are unavailable today. So I'd like to just then invite a nomination for the election of the chair. Diane?
Thank you. I would nominate Colm Gildernew for chair today.
Thank you. And a seconder?
I'll second that nomination.
Okay. That means that Colm Gildernew will be elected chair for today. Thank you.
Read the lawn. He promised. He promised the lawn.
Right, sorry. Can you put that over for come? Sorry. Apologies.
Lovely.
Open the whole time there, yeah?
Yeah, we're open. So if you just start.
Yes, I'm here. Okay, members, to Fáilte you're all very welcome to the 38th meeting of the Public Accounts Committee in 22 to 27 mandate. So members, the committee meeting will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online. However, there could be a slight delay in moving from a private session or back into public session, so please be patient when we're doing that. Those in the public gallery are welcome to use mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode, and all devices are muted. They can connect to Assembly Wi-Fi. Password details are available there in the gallery, and is not permitted to take photographs or record any recordings of the meetings. So agenda item 1 then, apologies. Clerk, do we have any apologies today?
Yes, Daniel McCrossan, Cheryl Brownlee and Colin Crawford.
Okay, thank you, Clerk. So members, agenda item 2 is the draft minutes. They're in your pack there, pages 8 to 12 of the meeting papers. Are members content to agree the minutes as drafted of the meeting of the 3rd of April?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you. Declaration of interest, members, agenda item 3. Does anybody want to declare any conflict or declaration of interest for today's meeting? Cathal?
I'm a member of the policing board.
You, Dan?
Chair, I am the chair of the all-party group on Vulnerable Community Sector.
Thank you. Any other declarations? We have nobody online at this stage, have we done?
No, we don't.
Okay, thanks members. No chairperson's business today. Agenda item 5, matters arising. Are there any matters arising, members? No, thank you. Agenda item 6 is correspondence. So I'll just refer you members to a letter dated 4th of April 2025 from the British Medical Association regarding the inquiry into access to general practice here in the North at pages 38 to 39 of the pack. So would members agree that we defer this letter for consideration at agenda item 9 today, when members will receive an update on the inquiry? Members content? Thank you. I refer you also to the letter dated 1st of April 2025 from Peter May, who's the Accounting Officer for the Department of Health, providing a further update on the MOR on mental health services. Would members be content that we defer this update for consideration at a later date due to the evidence session scheduled for today? Go ahead, Dan.
Or if I could just make a point, I'm happy to defer, but I wonder could we go back and ask for a little more information on some of these recommendations. There are 7 items that had target date of implementation of March, with a number of them saying on track, whereas the date of the letter was April, in particular the ones where they're saying on track with regard to the vulnerable community sector. So can we ask for some sort of an output on that, because they're saying on track in an April letter and it should have been March completion, but happy to defer.
Members content with that suggestion? Right. Yeah, thank you. Okay, members, so we're moving then to agenda item 7, which is continuing our inquiry into reducing adult reoffending, and we're taking an evidence session today. So there's relevant documentation in your packs, members, at page 72, page 41, 48, and the report from NIAO is at page 83 to 184. The briefing paper is at pages 73 to 82. So, we now welcome to today's meeting. So thank you, members. So we're now welcoming to today's meeting Emma Purdon, and Emma is Director of Communities and Family Services with Extern. We also have Patricia Devlin. Patricia is Programme Manager in Criminal Justice Services with Extern. We have Fiona Green, who is Chief Executive of Niacro, and Rachel Long, who's Director of Operations with Niacro. So, to Fáilte, you're all very welcome. We're also welcoming to today's meeting Stuart Stevenson. And Stuart is the Treasury Officer of Accounts with the Department of Finance, and Dorina Chiarville, Controller and Auditor General, NIAO. So, thank you all for attending today and agreeing to brief the committee today. I'm not sure which of you is going to make maybe some opening remarks, and then we'll get the members' questions, if that's okay with yourselves.
Okay, I'm going to go first, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Fiona.
So thank you, Chair, and to the committee for the invitation to today's session, providing Niacro, along with our colleagues in Extern, with this opportunity to speak to you about the work we do to support the reduction of adult reoffending in Northern Ireland, and to make recommendations for future implementation in reference to this inquiry. Excuse me. You will already have our briefing forwarded to the committee, which provides general information on Niacro and our services. But briefly, we are a voluntary organisation working since 1971 to reduce crime and its impact on people and communities. We are guided by our vision, which is of a society where the rights and needs of all people are equally respected and protected. Niacro's diverse range of services includes early intervention programmes, mentoring, employability services, finance and debt advice, and family support programmes. We help create meaningful change for over 7,000 people annually, and we facilitate over 30,000 prison visits across the prison estate each year. At Niacro, we believe the people who have offended or remain at risk of offending should and can be provided with support services to address both personal and systemic barriers, and that when these services are properly resourced and made available at the right time, people, families and communities can be kept safer. Involvement in the criminal justice system, including imprisonment, affects the whole family. Keeping community and family ties improves the resettlement of people leaving custody, improving the conditions at release to build a life away from crime. Our services, like Family Links, referenced by the Director General at this committee session last week, our Visitor Centre service and our Family and Money Matters Advice service are available to anyone impacted by custody and are aligned to the Department of Justice's Strengthening Family Relations Strategy. Moving to our employability support, research shows that securing a job is the most significant factor in breaking the cycle of reoffending. Similarly, engaging in and maintaining participation in training programmes has a proven impact on reducing reoffending. Contained in our briefing, we have referred to previous iterations of our employment support programmes, namely Reset and Job Track. Our current programme skill set sees Niacro staff based in the 3 prisons in Northern Ireland, as well as in each council area, providing support in basic life skills, developing a CV, applying for jobs, and providing vocational training. We also deliver a service called Disclosure, supporting individuals and businesses with advice and support on spent convictions to ensure safe and fair recruitment takes place. Another main focus of our services is providing trauma-informed mentoring support services to achieve stability with housing, health and finances. Colin Walsh, who is a lecturer at Queen's University, in a recent evaluation of one of our EPOC-funded programmes called InSync, noted the nature of the support our staff provide. This could have been issues with money, housing, benefits, or the basic things in life, access to food. In all cases, project workers walked alongside service users to help tend to these issues. Our mentoring services like APAC, Aspire, Transitions, which Amanda Stewart referred to at last week's session, and our women-specific service called Connections, work intensively with service users to find accommodation, apply for benefits, keep appointments, and liaise with families and communities to ensure long-term further wraparound support is available to support a settled life. Niacro are one of a number of voluntary and community organisations working within the criminal justice sphere, and we are all vital to the operation of the criminal justice system, and not least in providing support services to reduce offending and reoffending. Our role is business critical to the Department of Justice, as we leverage funding from all sources and align our own priorities to criminal justice agencies. Our staff bring expertise, skills, adaptability, a culture of partnership, and a willingness to work with people on the margins. Above all, we are trusted by the people and families we're here to support, and we never lose sight of the fact that everyone who works with us chooses to. To conclude these opening remarks, I would like to quote Shad Maruna, criminologist. Desistance is a process, not an event. The focus here is not on any particular moment of change or transformation, but rather on the maintenance of crime-free behaviour in the face of life's many obstacles and frustrations. The key to reducing reoffending is understanding that the person involved has to be at the centre of their own rehabilitation. Families, communities, policymakers, legislators, service providers and the criminal justice system can work together to assist. We welcome this opportunity to discuss their services, and we are looking forward to your questions. And I'd like to hand over to Emma now. Thank you. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you, Fiona. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Extern, I would like to thank the committee for inviting us to participate in the inquiry on reducing adult reoffending. If I may introduce Extern to you, we are a community and voluntary organisation commissioned by public sector bodies and government departments. Since the mid-1970s, we have grown our services portfolio to support, house and engage adults, young people, families and children. In the context of today, our criminal justice services are commissioned by supporting people and the Northern Ireland Prison Service. Our services are delivered in partnership with our commissioners and the wider organisations within the statutory and voluntary sectors that make up the criminal justice system. Effective partnership working is essential at all stages of service delivery. Extern's criminal justice services are fully detailed in your briefing pack. They include the Prisoner Support Project, the Criminal Justice Floating Support Project, and PBNI approved premises. Extern runs the Innes Centre in Belfast, Dismas House in Belfast and the Must Hostel in Cookstown. The focus of each is on reducing adult reoffending, supporting rehabilitation, ensuring community safety and contributing to an effective justice system. Additionally, we are committed to the safeguarding of adults and children and to public protection. Through our frontline services, we witness the profound impact of offending on victims, communities, families and the individuals themselves. We continually adapt and innovate our services to meet the growing complexity of the needs and the risks that are being presented. Our services are accessible, non-judgmental, welcoming and supportive, particularly for those individuals who are facing significant barriers. Extern co-designs its services to address the societal factors that can lead to offending and reoffending. These societal factors include trauma, poor mental health, addictions and the lack of suitable accommodation. Understanding why offending behaviour occurs is critically important, and it is usually a symptom or an outworking of a previous trauma. Together with our community and voluntary partners like Niacro, we provide targeted specialist interventions within a pro-social model, improving health and well-being, reducing offending and enhancing individuals' quality of life. Collaboration among the community and voluntary organisations working to reduce offending is facilitated within the Voluntary and Community Sector Social Enterprise Forum. That's not easy to say. That's the VCSSE. The forum is chaired by the Northern Ireland Prison Service to share best practices, address challenges, improve communication and to discuss common issues. The forum provides a space for networking and building professional relationships, highlighting each organisation's specialist focus and avoiding duplication in the provision of our services. Extern welcomes the commitment within the programme for government under Safer Communities to develop a cross-governmental strategy to reduce offending and reoffending. Tackling offending and reoffending cannot be the sole responsibility of the Department of Justice. As previously mentioned, it's the broader societal issues that contribute to offending that require a shared effort from across various departments. We believe that this commitment will lead to better outcomes and enhance the impact of all services. Service delivery providers in the community and voluntary sector face significant challenges, including budgetary constraints against increasing higher costs, lack of multi-year funding and regular cliff edges in our funding. Our sector remains key in delivering services that help reduce reoffending. We remain committed and are ready to work in partnership with all stakeholders to address these challenges through the development of the cross-departmental strategy. In closing, we highlight 3 key recommendations that the Public Accounts Committee could focus on for us. Support the Department of Justice in achieving the cross-departmental collaboration, support multi-year funding for the voluntary and community sector, and support the implementation of community-based solutions over custodial sentences, especially for non-violent crimes to decrease reoffending rates and support rehabilitation efforts. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. We're happy for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. 2 very thought-provoking presentations there, so thank you for that. I suppose I maybe should have said not really maybe a current interest, but previously I worked as a social worker, so I would have worked with both organisations and gained an understanding of what it is you bring to the table in this respect in a complex area of work. I have to say I thought it was very usefully flagged up there. We often think about offending and reoffending as an individual thing with that person, but the idea that you've raised there around people, families and communities all stand to benefit from improvement in this area, and also indeed public life and public services in terms of finances and all of that. So that's interesting. And I also noted the focus on housing, health and finances as being the stabilising or some of the stabilising factors or challenging factors, as well as that lack of multi-year funding, which we have recognised for a long time across many parts of the work that we do here, is a challenge to all of that. I suppose in terms of questions, the first one for me is, can you briefly outline to committee some of the key high-level challenges that you face in trying to successfully rehabilitate adult offenders and reoffenders whilst in the community or in custody?
Okay. Start.
High-level challenges, I think we begin with the fact that there is a lack of a cross-departmental strategy and more importantly action plans in relation to the delivery of reoffending and rehabilitative programmes. I mean, it would be folly for me not to mention the funding and the resourcing issues that the voluntary and community sector are currently facing. And I know that Diane herself is the chairing of the all-party group for the voluntary and community sector, so is well aware of the cliff edge that Emma referred to in relation to some of the funding challenges that we have all experienced in relation to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, for example. As I said in my opening remarks, one of the key factors for reducing reoffending is to ensure that someone has a job and sustains a job. So Niacro's response to that over years, over many decades, has been to deliver in the community and also in the prison setting employability programmes. So our current one is called Skill Set, and it is funded currently by the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, with contributions from the prison service and probation, and also a private charity in Ballymena called the Gallagher Trust. So one of the challenges for us is the fact that reoffending and to reduce someone's proclivity to go on and reoffend again is a long-term challenge, both at an individual and also a society, from a society perspective. But year to year and sometimes month to month funding presents organisations, voluntary and community organisations like ourselves, with that challenge of retaining our skilled staff that I mentioned, and that are really, really vital. The work that both Niacro and Extern and others do is difficult work. It's often misunderstood, and it is challenging in itself, but it also comes with the rewards of knowing that ultimately that we're here to help people who perhaps haven't been assisted by society or by others in the past, and with just the right support and the right time, we can be there to help them and to guide them along and to walk alongside in their journey. So high level challenges are around funding and the conditions of funding, and also the conditions for the voluntary and community sector in obtaining that funding. But from a practical and operational level, it can be, even within the prison setting, having enough space to deliver programmes. I think we mentioned in our briefing that one of the operational challenges that we experience in the delivery of our programmes is the fact that staffing within the prison can become very stressed if they have sick leave or there's security issues and all of that. So prisoners have a quite a lengthy regime on a daily basis. So it's really important that rehabilitation and the programmes that we all provide inside the prison, through the gate and into the community, become paramount and are given that space and place to do that. So it's a challenge for prisons and probation because their resources are limited too, and their ability to support us is limited in that regard as well. But we're looking forward to working with all of the agencies on that strategy and the action plan, and coming out of that to challenge these challenges together.
Thank you. And I suppose coming from that, then, one of the areas that I would have an interest in is around the whole restorative justice and potential of that. So from your work with individuals, do you think we could and should be doing more in the restorative justice space? And would that lead to better outcomes regarding reoffending in your experience?
I think do you want me to take that?
I have no personal experience of delivering restorative justice, but I am aware that there are a number of accredited restorative justice practitioners across across the statutory sector. I think that service users want to be heard, and victims also need a voice. The success of any delivery of restorative justice comes down to the people that are involved in the process, and that requires consent from both parties. It may not always be able to be delivered at a particular time because both the victim and the perpetrator would need to be ready and in the same place. What I would say, based on my personal professional experience, is sometimes service users are not actually asked, what happened that led you to do this? What happened to you? As part of the restorative justice process, it's not about them, talking about their own problems and what have you, but it can trigger that conversation for people to show that they understand that there's more behind what had led them to that. Victims, need a voice. They need to be able to express their needs. They need to be able to express the impact of the offending on their immediate lives, their families, their communities. And I think that there is a difference. In my experience, service users will often accept something better from someone who's not a professional. You know, a person in the community has had a direct experience of being offended against, so, you know, can carry more weight in me coming across and saying, no, you shouldn't have done that. Can you repeat the question? Have I answered it for you?
I'm just wondering as well, that do you believe, professionally, do you believe that we could get better outcomes from better use or
from
further use?
Providing that space. I think so, from that interpersonal human connection.
Mm-hmm. May I come in just there, just to declare an interest in it myself? I co-chair the Restorative Practices Forum in Northern Ireland, and I also sit on the DOJ's Adult Restorative Justice Working Group. So I would be very aware of the department's developments in terms of accreditation for restorative justice organisations, as well as looking to how referrals will come from the criminal justice system. I suppose to build on the success of the youth conferencing service within the Youth Justice Agency, and to, as Trish says, you know, give victims and witnesses, give victims and people who have caused the harm an opportunity to come together and repair harm. Now that has to be done carefully. It has to be done in a safe way, but from the victim's perspective, and I, for many years ago, worked in victim support, and we would at that stage, and victim support are also on the working group as well. You know, see the benefits for victims, and sometimes in some extreme cases. So it is on a case-to-case basis, but we believe that the department are doing the right thing and bringing those plans forward. There is potential for more repairing of harm to be done when safe practices are resourced.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go to members now. So I'm going to Diane first. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. And last week we had the department, the Prisons and Probation Board in, and they all spoke very strongly of the important role that funding community sector play in delivering justice in Northern Ireland. So I just wanted to ask you specifically, to what extent can you provide support and services to the adult offender and reoffender population in Northern Ireland, and are there significant gaps in both the number of clients that you can support and the type of services that you can provide both in custody and the community?
Yeah. Like that down.
Lots of question.
That was a wee handy question there.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Just to clarify, Dan, so you're asking around the sort of the types of support that's available, and then I suppose the gaps in relation to meeting the need that we're seeing, both in custody and through the gate into the community then. Yeah, okay. So as Fiona has said out and Emma in their welcoming statements, I mean, the services that we provide across adult reoffending are broken down in the main in relation to supporting relationships. And strengthening family ties is a big piece of our work that we do. I mean, I know from last week's session the numbers that were talked about. So probation have seen an increase in the people that they are supporting. I think it's been a rise from 5,000 people under supervision to 6,000 people in the last wee while. And I suppose just to say that, you know, our resource has remained static. You know, there hasn't been an increase or passed down into community voluntary sector in order to meet that need. We do have a big demand for our services. For example, in our Family Link service around supporting family relationships, we're funded to work with about 1,200 families a year. But we know there's about 4,000 or thereabouts people come through into prison on an annual basis. So that's from the meeting people at committal stage and reaching out to support families there. So we're not able to meet the need of everybody, you know, that comes into the prison at that initial point, which is a crucial point. I suppose in addition to that, if we move to employability support, as Fiona talked about, our work around skills building and supporting people into training and into employment. We are funded in this year that we're just moving into now, 25-26, to work within and around just over 500 people a year to support them into paid employment and into education and training support. again, if you set that aside, the numbers of people who would like to avail of our services and support, and the demand is much greater than the need we can meet. We do provide services around stabilising finances, so that's a really in-demand service for us. So our financial advice and money matters service. You can imagine a lot of people coming into custody, and for people who are serving community sentences have debt issues, maybe have drug debts or other debts, gambling debts and so on. And just access even to money and benefits, entitlements and so on, and needing somebody to advocate for them. A lot of the people we support struggle to open a bank account to be able to even have a paid salary into it. So those are some of the issues that we struggle with. Again, I'm just looking around our figures around stabilising finances. So last year we supported around 800 people there, but again, could probably double that. Our advice services then around supporting people with disclosure advice and how to safely and fairly, recruit people. Again, last year we supported around 700 people with how to disclose their conviction when they're applying for work where they need to, and in order to do that in a way that is within legislation and meets the requirements of Access NI as well. We have a disclosure helpline that's a busy helpline, and there's again demand on that. We have one member of staff at the moment to currently staff that helpline, and over the last wee while we've had to actually bring our own resources to fund that ourselves because we haven't had the resource to do so. So I suppose gaps-wise for us, there is a good suite of services available around mentoring support, around all of those things that I've talked about. I suppose for us at the moment, and it's welcoming to see hopefully coming down the line in the Justice Bill and in the transformation bids that have been successful around bail support programmes, around electronic monitoring and so on, and I suppose more of a cross-departmental wraparound support, more connectedness. So those would be the things that we would welcome by way of meeting need. But I think certainly it's around the services are there, but it is a matter of lifting them up to be able to reach.
And is your funding there, where you're talking about you're funded to 1,200 families, 500 unemployability, are those numbers just set by the department in terms of what funding they have available as opposed to demand led?
Very much so, yeah, very much so.
So as you're saying, there is this significant
and we've had
gap
to reduce it. I mean, last year, sorry Dan, we were able to reach over 700, 800 people around our employability work. There has been a reduction, as you'll know, in the UK Sherpas Burley allocations this year, and we've had to reduce that down to 500 in the context of there being an increased prison population and more people needing support. So it's a real frustration for us that we've had to do that.
No, absolutely, and then the pressure on the vulnerable community sector of the increased employers' national insurance contributions sort of drives that down even more. So definitely gaps. So demand's increasing, but not able to.
I think that's what we're finding within Extern. If you've read our pack there, one of our new pilot schemes that just started last year was the Prisoner Support Project, and it came off the back of the audit report done in 2023. So we developed that for a 2-year pilot. And just as Rachel's saying there, even the funding for that, working very closely, co-designing it with the prison service, working with prisoners and the governors within the prison. There wasn't enough funds to start that, so again, Extern had to dip into their own reserves to be able to fund that for a 2-year pilot. Now, the very positive results we're getting off the back of that, it was commissioned to work with 80 prisoners within the prison and warm handover out into the community to 60. In their first year, they've worked with 118 prisoners, and out of that, 87 out of the 118 have not reoffended. So that just shows a reduction of almost 50%, because within the audit report, 52% of prisoners reoffend within the first year. So at the minute, due to the work that team is doing within the prison and outside of the prison around homelessness, around addictions and around mental health, only 26% of who they've worked with have reoffended, and even in that there's some people who as soon as they came out of prison didn't engage with the community. So we're looking at the figures in that as well. We've completed first year of that. It's looking very positive. Over the next year though, it's down to us to go out and look for that funding to keep that going, because again we're going to hit a cliff edge at the end of this year. There's 8 staff employed, they're all new staff, they're all dedicated, they're working very hard to make this work, but it's up to us now. We will be coming out to departments. I'm warning them all now that we're coming out soon, just to show that this is working. It's making a real difference. But as Rachel said there, we have waiting lists in all our projects, and even within the approved hostels, we have 91 beds in Northern Ireland for the approved hostel provision. There's a constant waiting list, and as soon as an individual comes off a probation order, they are moved out of that hostel into another hostel to clear that bed for somebody else to come in. So there's really not a free night for a bed. As soon as a bed is empty, it doesn't get cold, somebody else is straight into filling that, and that would be the same across all our projects, I would say.
It's amazing outcomes, and whenever you have that demonstrable, statistic coming in the back of the audit report, it's just so important. And the department had said to us they're having this dashboard, and it should hopefully capture those types of things. And my next question is: have you been involved to date in the development of the department's refreshed offending and reoffending strategy to capture these things? And if so, do you think it's likely to represent an improved and more effective response compared to previous strategies that they've had on this?
Well, I mean, if you want me to we have been at early stages of the discussion in terms of scoping out, I suppose, what's needed. I know that the department are looking to other departments for engagement and collaboration and commitment to that. You'll certainly get that from the voluntary and community sector, and I believe that, and hopefully through this committee as well, and through the findings of the Audit Office report, that we've got something really substantial to build now upon. I know we all find ourselves in very difficult times, and the Audit Office report was done on the back of COVID as well, so there was obviously particular issues in relation to the development and implementation of particular strategies for the department across the board. But from our perspective and through the forum, the voluntary and community sector forum that Emma referred to, there's a real opportunity to do something very meaningful and special, but it needs to come from a cross-departmental approach, and not just around a strategy. It has to be around action, and it has to be around specific targets within those action plans and accountability, because, a fundamental value of Niacro has been justice, and it has been accountability. So those are things that we're doing with our individual service users and families on a daily basis. So I think that needs to go the whole way through in terms of accountability. Offending isn't caused necessarily by the Department of Justice or anything within their auspices, and reoffending and reducing reoffending happens in the community. So it has to be a cross-departmental executive-wide approach. It is about keeping people safe, but it's also about giving people an opportunity for a second chance and to make a really positive contribution to their communities and their society.
Yeah, glad to hear you are in there working on that with them. Thank you, Chair.
Just to say, Diane, just in relation to the important issue you raised at the start around victims' voices, the committee have, as of today, written to the Victims of Crime Commissioner to see how we can get that voice into this inquiry as well.
Yes.
So thank you for that. Moving on then, we'll come to David. David, go ahead, please.
Okay, thanks for coming in. Last week, the department talked about actually introducing the short-term prisoner programme. I kind of appreciate it's really early in this, but can you tell us how you believe that's working in practice?
Okay, so as Emma said, we've worked with 118 service users so far. Just to give you an idea of how needed this service is, and you bear in mind that we're just coming to the end of our first year. It does take time for a service to embed in. It takes time for the relevant people, either from another organisation or from the prisoners themselves, to become aware of the service and understand the remit and understand the criteria. So in the first year we've had 336 referrals to the service. Now when they were all screened out, 106 were appropriate. There were 38 that are waiting to get onto the programme piece. So we have 2 key workers that are based in the prison that delivers the programme piece, and then 4 social workers who support the service users who have completed the programme in the prison. So in terms of the success, some of it is based on our stats, on the outcomes that Emma had just presented about the 26% return to custody rate out of then 74% not returning. Of the 31 who didn't return to custody, 11 left the service on discharge, but had completed phase 1 of the programme. Some of them may have left the catchment area. At the moment, one of the gaps is that the community support is only delivered within the Greater Belfast area. So in terms of development, we would love to be able to develop that regionally and for it to operate out of McGilligan and also out of Highbank, where we could reach young people and women. Of the 20 who did continue with the service, 14 accessed it for short-term immediate intervention only after discharge. From a human rights perspective, it's about consent and partnership. We don't do things to people. One of the reasons why the PSP was set up was because it was going to reach the cohort of people who were being discharged from prison that were not already linked in with support or supervision from probation. So most people don't want to be on probation, but what comes with that is structure and support and people to advocate for them to get other services. So the services, it's entirely on a voluntary basis. So 14 accessed for immediate intervention, GP registration, benefits, and then 6 remained for long-term intervention. And anyone who did return to custody, it was generally for low-level offending. In terms of measuring outcomes, we use a model of assessment called Outcome Star. And there's one that's specifically tailored to justice. And the STAR it facilitates the service user themselves, as Fiona, I think, was saying about the service user being at the centre of the support. So they work in partnership with the key worker to identify where they are in their journey within, I think it's a total of 10 domains. Now, the domains that would be particularly focused on for the PSP project is in relation to substance misuse and mental health, because those were the 2 key areas that were identified in the co-design of the programme, where services weren't always available to people when they were coming out. So I'm not going to use the word restrictive, but in terms of movement on the journey, obviously you can't see the outgoings of that until they are out. So there's a baseline reading taken just before they start the therapeutic programme that we offer, which is called Let's Talk. And then there's another reading taken on the completion of that programme. The programme has 3 phases. Some people, depending on when we catch them and depending on how long they have left in their short sentence, may only have completed phase 1, or some will have completed phase 1 and 2, and then a smaller number have completed phase 3. Going forward, as we're bedded in longer, the number that would complete phase 3 will obviously increase. And what we have seen across all the domains is that there has been positive movement. The service user in partnership with the key worker will self-assess as to where they are in terms of motivation and ability to change on a scale of 1 to 10. So most people were coming in at, say, I think the lowest there is 4.3, and then on review some people were getting up to 6.6. So it looks like small increments, but for a person who maybe nobody has had that conversation with before, who haven't had the opportunity, that is actually quite significant. What you sometimes find is that in that immediate time when they're just released, there's a little bit of, oh, I'm out, and you might have a bit of a dip back. But then once the support is built in again, we continue to use that tool and to review. You should see an upward trend again of people moving more towards independence with those key areas. There's a lot of support required for them to attain those key areas. And I think I've talked a lot now. You'll have to remind me of the question to see if I missed anything.
No, I suppose the question was how well you believe it's working in practice.
Yes. Well, I'll give you, if I refer to my notes, I'll give you a couple of examples. we're very interested.
Can I step in? Just can I step in, David? I suppose one of the issues that's been identified in the first year is, as Trish said, the focus was on addictions and mental health, but certainly the majority of prisoners coming out short term are coming out to no fixed abode, and we're finding again, as was flagged in the audit report, you know, in 2019 to 20, 16% of prisoners released to no fixed abode, and unfortunately that is something that this team is having to pick up as well. So before they even get to look at the addictions and the mental health, we're having to try and get those individuals into some kind of housing somewhere so that they're not on the streets of Belfast. And it's highlighting the cross-departmental need, where we need supporting people, we need Department of Communities, we need health, and we need justice to work together in all of these. So, but certainly very positive figures in the first year, and we're hoping that will continue into the second.
Very positive commentary from the service users that we've worked for. We do proactively seek out their feedback, because obviously no programme is going to work unless you have service user buy-in. So one of the things that we have noticed is the 2 key workers are very proactive. They'll go out to the houses in the prison, they'll go on the landings, and they had to publicise the service at the start. And by word of mouth, prisoners were approaching them. Oh, my friend down the block says great things about you, you know, can you help me? And so it's almost self-generating. Now, not all of those people obviously met the criteria, but the fact that they were actually coming to the staff themselves. I know that Beverly last week spoke about one of the challenges working with short-term prisoners is that, you know, they maybe don't feel engaging in a significant piece of work is worth their while if they've only got a very, very short sentence. So the fact that people are coming, you know, of their own volition and asking for it is really quite something.
Okay, yeah. So again, last week we heard about sort of the increase of complex needs of prisoners. That was one of the things that came out, and the prison service has commenced a review of prisoner the development model. Have you been involved in that review?
Yes, we have indeed. Yes, so we met with the review team, with the lead, to contribute to that and to feed into it. I know in Niacro and the same within Extern, our key prison staff are based in and alongside the PDU teams within the prisons, and are very much seen as trusted, you know, partners working day and daily hand in hand with the PDU team. So we did feed back into the team. I mean, our view is that the PDU model itself is a good model. You know, it's probably the right model, and it works well. The issue for us that we find is that, you know, the PDU staff here are excellent, you know, have all the expertise. They know about our services. They know when they're assessing somebody's need as to whether or not Niacro are best placed to take that, Extern are best placed to take that. You know, Start 360 is where they need to get the support from. They have all of that information and knowledge. The issue is that they're being redeployed in order to pick up other roles within the prison service where they're absolutely needed to be in order to backfill those roles, but they're being taken away from the work that they need to do to support reoffending and rehabilitation. So, I mean, our staff have stepped in order to, over the last few months actually, help the PDU to meet a backlog of assessments, and in order to help them to do their role. So we have a good understanding of what is needed. But as I say, the model itself, in our opinion, is a good model, and it is just about the prison service having the right workforce levels and numbers in order to adhere to it.
All right. Yeah. So the view. Sort of the next question was around what are your views, if you know, within the complex needs of prisoners, how the current model, what changes needed? Is it really staff numbers? Is that what you're?
It is.
Is there anything else?
Yeah. I mean, very much so. It is about the other bit is around, you know, having, as Fiona says, you know, the prison estate is an ageing prison estate. You know, and yes, there has been, you know, Davis House, you know, which is a fantastic facility, you know, recently opened, but. Even getting access, you know, for us to deliver our programmes, you know, we're really good at flexing and creating programmes to meet the needs of short-term sentence prisoners and others. But it's having somewhere to deliver those programmes within the prison estate is a real challenge.
Absolutely.
It's the prison staff, having capacity to unlock the cells and bring somebody over to engage in our programmes. Those are the operational issues that we experience. We'll have staff ready to go to deliver programmes. We bring in external providers to deliver programmes, and sometimes they have to be cancelled at the last minute because we haven't got safe staff and numbers in order to unlock. So those are some of the barriers that we come up against. And as I say, it is just about actually having the right resource levels within the prison to deliver on that.
Yeah. We would agree.
Just picking up on that, we actually had identified that there was a need and certainly capacity to add an additional key worker into the prison, but we weren't able to do that because there literally was nowhere to put them.
There's no desk, there's no desk,
no phone, no.
Yeah, we have to be able to record. Data was mentioned in the report as well, and the importance of us being able to evidence our outcomes and record that we've met somebody and what difference that's made. So even down to having somewhere for our staff to be able to log on to the PRISM system, to accept the referrals and to report back on what they're doing. Those are difficulties that we experience as well.
Yeah, so it's not the model as such you're saying that changes, it's actually the resource
and the
environment.
Yeah.
Okay, no bother. Thank you,
David. Tom.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being with us today. From your experience in the work that you do you think that enough is being done to reduce the numbers going to prison in the first instance? By providing, for example, alternatives to short-term sentencing, improvement of bail, and information and support to reduce numbers being placed on remand?
I think we would all say that we think more can be done. I know that discussion on short sentencing and potential alternatives has been ongoing for a number of years, and I do remember being at a series of workshops up here as far back as 2018 where we were talking a lot about alternatives to short sentences, and some of the things that came up during that time were the value of community hubs and actually restorative hubs was and restorative justice was very much considered to be an alternative option at that time. I know that then there, through the sentencing bill, and there was consultation then in 2020 about, that was brought out to community and voluntary sector to feed into that. I think that more could be done to embed these short sentence community alternatives and to engage them in that at a very early stage. Resources can contribute to prevention as well as reaction to the offending, and if more resources are put into the prevention end of it, then obviously that will help. People who have engaged in community disposals tend to have a more successful outcome than short sentences on their own. Because they're required to engage in more therapeutic and supportive work. There might be a perception that they're a soft option. They're not, because they actually demand more of the person. And in my experience through working with people through our criminal justice floating support, and particularly through our approved premises, service users will tell you that it's easier to go back to prison. And that's actually one of the issues that arose over the Christmas period with some of the PSP service users. They were having challenges getting accommodation, and in order, and this is really, really sad, in order to achieve shelter, food and company over the Christmas period, some of them just decided that they would do something quite low level so that they could get back to prison. And I think that if that is happening, then that's your evidence that an alternative is needed in order to make community disposals more successful. The resourcing around that has to increase as well in terms of health services, in terms of accommodation. Accommodation is key. I know that Fiona would have highlighted that the single most important factor in desistance is constructive use of time and meaningful activity by way of training and employment. For a lot of people that can happen because their accommodation isn't stable enough, or they're reliant on crash facilities. So you need some sort of an address from which everything else could happen. So I think that the possibilities for alternatives to short sentences are certainly possible, but there's so much other things in the background that need to be improved first. I hope that answers your question.
It would be Niacro's position that I think we should be trying to prevent as many people as possible from incarceration.
Yeah.
Incarceration in itself will be a big factor in reoffending. So that's not to say that justice needs to be served on the needs of victims, and their sense of justice does need to be satisfied as well. So we understand when sentencing is occurring that there's a balance and there's a weighing up to be done of all of those factors in terms of sentencing and using short sentences as a disposal. So we would prefer to see resourcing put into the community-based sentencing and supporting and resourcing probation to suppose supervise the range of custodial disposals that's already there, but to develop those more diversionary models and keeping, particularly for us, one of our big asks will be to raise the minimum age of criminal responsibility and to try to keep as many children and young people out of the system as possible, because that will, as they age up into then adulthood, there's more chance that they will become more involved in the criminal justice system if they're criminalised at an earlier age. So, and also to support the sentencing reforms that are ongoing. So we're obviously aware of the review of sentencing at the moment, and we look forward to seeing the outcome of that. And because it's really important that in order to transform, and the transform that's needed within the criminal justice system and on all of the agencies in and around people who offend and reoffend, it's going to be really important to make sure that there's enough resources across the piece.
You find a number of people reoffend because of a fear factor. Whenever they get out into society, the proper support's not there.
Yes,
and absolutely. They reoffend then to get back into what they see as a safe environment.
Yeah. I mean, that can happen on an individual basis, and I suppose one of the other factors that is that there is the continuing legacy of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, which is a factor for the people and some of the services that we have, particularly within our Aspire programme, which is funded from EPOC via the Probation Board. So we are aware that that funding is actually coming to an end in the next 2 years. So I think that that's something that we would really want to take this opportunity to highlight today as well. We're helping, I think it's over 500 people a year.
It is. So our Aspire mentoring programme, it talked about, community-based alternatives and whether there's enough being done, I suppose, through EPOC. And we're so grateful that we have had the funding through the executive programme for paramilitarism and organised crime, because it has allowed us to support 500 people in the community who are on community-based sentences and who are subject to probation supervision. So that's a complementary mentoring support where we will wrap alongside those people and mentor them. And I mean, we've supported over 200 people just last year. And of that, over 77% of them were not recalled or remanded back into custody or didn't come back into detention, of services. And again, our Aspire Community Engagement Programme, so that's a programme which is sort of earlier stage. So it's for people who are not subjected to either probation supervision or any licence conditions, but it is for people who are 16 to 30-year-olds. And we know that tends to be the cohort of people who are, in the criminal justice system. So that allows us to intervene at that earlier stage in the community for people who are engaging in risk-taking behaviours and who are really at the cusp of coming in to the system. And we worked with 336 referrals there last year as well. So there's definitely the need, but as Fiona says, there's a real growing concern about who's going to pick up that work when EPOC funding is not there. That's winding down this year and into next year. And those would be our neediest cohort of people that come through our door and in our communities that we work with. So they are the people that need the support most.
Yeah.
Just looking at offending and reoffending, we always have to keep the victims and their families in mind on this. What work, if any, do you do with victims groups to understand their views when designing programmes and initiatives and all that type of thing? I
mean, I can take that, yes. I mean, the The mission for Niacro is to reduce crime and its impact on people and communities. So we exist to prevent as much crime as possible, and but we understand that people are involved in the criminal justice system and need support to desist from crime and to reoffend. We work very closely with Victim Support Northern Ireland and with the Victims Commissioner as well, so we would have regular strategic meetings with the senior teams in those organisations. We've recently collaborated with Victim Support in relation to scoping out the development of a potential restorative justice project. Again, these things are all resource and business development time and capacity dependent. So we have we keep victims, I guess, at the centre really of our focus in mind. As I said at the beginning, the work that Niacro and Extern do is difficult work, and it's often misunderstood, and there are perceptions around why we're here and what we're doing. But it is simply to reduce crime and its impact. And I think that we understand that at the end of every crime and incident that we are helping somebody not repeat, there has been a victim and families, and including their own families, caught up in the impact and the ripple effect of that in communities, which can be devastating. And sometimes it's not just the big crimes that reach the news. It can be smaller, which we would deem smaller crimes, can have a devastating impact on victims and then people who witness as well. So it's really important for us that and also there is a huge correlation between people who offend and who have also been victims. There's a massive correlation between the two. So one day they could be the person that caused the harm, and the next day they are the person who has been harmed. So we actually have as I said, I think I might have referred to it earlier, our APAC funded In Sync programme, which is a counselling service for victims of paramilitary style attacks. So those are largely young men, but some women, who have been subject to paramilitary style assaults over the years, and we're providing, it's the first of its kind service through the APAC funding, which we're continuing on this year to do. But again, as Rachel said, those things are going to fall off a cliff edge potentially, so we are really concerned that people who are the most on the margins will go beyond the margin.
You, Tom? Audrey.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for your presentation and your answers so far. I just have two short questions. The first one is around reducing reoffending. So what do you consider to be the three biggest priorities that need to be addressed now?
For me, it would be accommodation, provision and availability of accessible services, and obviously funding to do that.
I'll go with that too. On behalf of Extern, that would be it. Yes, accommodation is the major one for us. That's number one.
Yeah. For Niacro, three things: cross-departmental action plan and strong leadership to tackle this issue together. We want trauma-informed mentoring, robust evidence-based support linked to data across the system and linked to outcomes, which will be against the targets in the first one, and of course multi-year funding for the voluntary and community sector to support the criminal justice system and to recognise our already substantial contribution to the efforts of the criminal justice system and the department in trying to reduce reoffending.
Thanks for that. I think there's been so much to take away from today, but I think just even that succinct point is really important for us to be able to look at that going forward. Just in terms of best practice then, obviously as a committee we consistently look at best practice in other jurisdictions, and naturally you quite often go to the south, you go to England, Scotland, Wales and so on. Are there any other jurisdictions that you think that we should be looking to as models of best practice? Are there any that you look to as models of best practice?
In relation to the delivery of voluntary community sector organisations, or just generally around
this entire topic, as broad
the
as
penal system.
broad as
Do
you
you
can.
want to take that? Yeah.
Yes, I mean, we are part of different networks, and I suppose over the years, funny, this is something we were reflecting on with our team. I mean, there would have been more opportunities in years gone by for us to go and look and explore at other jurisdictions and take that back as to how they do things. But a couple of things. So one, we're a part of a European network in relation to specific support for children who are impacted by parental imprisonment. And that's been really important for us, where we're able to visit prisons right across Europe and see how other organisations like our own are delivering best practice. I have to say that we're very proud to say that we're up there in relation to the interventions and the supports that are available, to be honest with you, and we are looked upon. In fact, even more locally, I mean, we met recently with the Department of Education in England just this week, because they've just appointed a policy team within the Department of Education to try and lift and look specifically at the needs of children impacted by parental imprisonment. So that's something that we would love to explore more here, as to how the Department of Education and what we can do here around that, for example. I suppose looking into some of the more Nordic countries and Sweden and Denmark and so on is somewhere that we look to, and particularly this year around their engagement with employers and businesses and private sector, and how they look at creating opportunities both for working out, so people coming working out through the prison and into community social enterprises, but also fully on release, as to how we can actually support business and private sector. So those are things that where we have looked to in order to bring better practice back here for us. Yeah.
That's really useful.
I actually just turn that on its head, because it's not just about us going to other jurisdictions to look at best practice. We do have experience of other jurisdictions coming to us, and that needs to be really recognised. In the last couple of years, Extern, we have worked with the probation service from the Republic of Ireland, who came up to visit our approved premises, because they don't have a model that replicates that in the south. Only last year we had a cohort of people who worked in and around the prison service from Finland. Finland has fantastic provision for their homeless population, and a really structured government programme by where it's joint up working in terms of accommodation and support. They don't have the same when it comes to the prisons, and what they were saying to us was that they have real challenges in that partnership and joined up working for the person to be engaged with at that early stage and before they were getting out of prison. So they were really interested in our prisoner support project and also our criminal justice floating support. So I thought I would just put out there that,
absolutely. Yeah, it works both ways.
It does. And it's about mutual learning and sharing best practice, and that's what it's all about. Everybody benefits from that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your answers.
Thank you.
Just before I come to Ciara, on a wee follow-up on that, through your own networks, are you aware of comparable data for reoffending rates elsewhere? Is there places that we're very close to in terms of comparisons?
Off the top of my head, I'm not. I know that we have a higher rate of short sentence prisoners compared with the rest of the UK, for all the reasons that we've been talking about for this time.
I don't think we are comparable, but I need to go and check on that. We need to come back to you.
If you do find out, we would appreciate it.
I would think that the audit office report, though, does highlight the huge disparity between the numbers of remand prisoners here in Northern Ireland as well. So I know that that's something that, there's obviously the factors that we've already discussed around accommodation and decisions taken at disposal then. So
we'll look at that and we'll come back to you then.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Just having a wee drink there, but thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for your answer so far. I would say 3 words come to mind: complex, complicated and challenging.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. And just before I get into the serious questions of how you're going to influence the recommendations at the end of this report.
That's right.
My first question, obviously, and I appreciate the funding, and I mean, whether it forms part of any of our recommendations, we'll have a conversation in committee with that, because we understand that's there. But my first question probably is this here, and I know you are working across and with all the departments in cases, right? Now, I'll ask this as a wee simple question. have we all the tools to do the job of the funding in the morning? And I mean, everybody playing the part, each department. Do you know what I mean? Because that's key. You mentioned strategy, but my question is, if we had the funding in the morning, have we enough experience on understanding the causes and knowing the solutions to it? Would we have we all that detail and that information now sitting there if we had funding? And I know it's a complicated one, but I just want to get a better understanding where we go with all this, because there's been a number of reports done for a number of years, and we understand some of the root causes.
Yes.
And you know, it's complex and it's diverse and all of that there, but I just want to try and get a better understanding for ourselves where we would go. And I know it's a complicated question, but just your views on that, please.
It's a complicated, so if I'm understanding you correctly, is if we had this pot of funding, would we have the tools to deliver what would be needed? So certainly across the voluntary and community sector, there are many organisations, each coming with, you know, a different specialism and a different piece of the puzzle, if you like, in terms of our experience on the ground and what we're hearing from service users, which is a really good indicator of what is needed. We are able to identify those gaps, one of them going back to the constructive use of time issue. One of the gaps is a community hub, where people who are, for whatever reason, either their health and well-being or perhaps their readiness to to engage in focused assistance are not able to be in employment. So there's a real gap and a need for somewhere for them to come to receive support, for them to move towards that, and we are in negotiations with some funders to provide. We've submitted costs for that to provide what it is that we needed. And I spoke earlier about regional expansion of services. I think that we could sit here for hours being able to talk about all the things that we could do that would contribute to the overall reduction in reoffending, and it's all about service development in a place that the service users can reach, and about publicising that, because very often people just don't know where to go. So that's mine.
Just maybe to add to that, I suppose, just as you were asking the question, a few things that came to mind for me, I suppose. We have an excellent workforce within the Voluntary and Community Centre who are so passionate and so dedicated and so committed to doing the work that we do. It is so challenging, it is so complex, and people work in this sector because they want to do it and they want to see success and they want to support people to turn the curve, really, and to make those changes. So I think we absolutely do have the workforce there to do that. Some of the things that we're readying ourselves for and that we're doing in order to maintain that expertise within the sector is that more recently we have just developed our own Centre for Development within our organisation, and we've registered with an organisation accreditation body who were previously known as Skills for Justice, or SFJ Awards. And the idea of that, I suppose, we recognise that we do receive core funding through the Department of Justice, that we're very pleased to be able to say that we've got that. And as organisations, we recognise that working in this space and in this sector requires that level of expertise. So not everybody that comes to work with us are social work qualified, nor do they need to be. They need to be within probation board, and within other roles. But what we're doing is we're developing, along with our universities here, qualifications around how we support women, for example, within the criminal justice system, how we have gender-informed responses, making sure that our staff have the skills and expertise. When we look at, our expertise as well, I suppose, and assistance theory, one of the things that tells us, and the evidence tells us, is we can have all these different models of work. And actually it's less about the models, but it's about relationships. It's about relationship-based practice. Is what makes a difference.
I'll just rephrase it slightly bit, because I appreciate and I understand that, and I know that already. My question probably was more along the lines of working with your partners in terms of responsibility from departments and all those other
and the
partners.
buy-in from there.
And they have to be, so that forms it. My second question then, moving on, is the Justice Bill. If there was something you wanted included in it.
Okay.
I'm only throwing it out there. Because if we are serious about bringing recommendations trying to address this issue, there's a responsibility of this committee here.
We probably have two clear ones.
So we want to hear it now. You know what I mean? We have an opportunity now to. So
NIACRO are going to be appearing at the Justice Committee on the 8th of May, so we'll be back up again in a month's time. But I suppose we will be there to talk to the draft legislation as it is presented. But specifically for us, we wanted to raise two areas, one an amendment and one not an amendment, which we think should be an amendment, which is raising the age of minimum criminal responsibility. So that's an important policy ask for us and with our colleagues in the children's sector and across our criminal justice sector, funding community organisations who support that initiative. And also importantly for us as well is the reform of the Rehabilitation of Offenders legislation. It's a key piece of legislation. It is decades behind the England and Wales legislation. It is well due for reform. We support the bringing forward of the reform as it stands, and we're looking forward to going to the Justice Committee to talk in detail about I suppose those systemic barriers that the existing order presents for people living with a criminal record in Northern Ireland, and not just for somebody who's had a custodial sentence or probation supervision. It's for people with fines. So on the long-term impact of having a criminal record can have on accessing employment, accessing education, accessing insurance, accessing travel, and we have countless case studies, if you want to call them, but real life stories of people who they did something at a very, very early age and it has literally carried through for 40 years, and it has hampered them. They've lived with shame and regret and disappointment, and it has led to impact on mental health, impact on family life. So those are some of the systemic barriers that we speak to. So for me, that reform of Rehabilitation of Offenders Order really, really needs to happen, and it's been a long-term campaign of NIACRO, so that was quite an easy answer from this committee. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks for your indulgence. The question, at present, is it a case where the funding is more geared towards solutions and addressing the problems, or is it partly mixed between addressing root causes, trying to do research? And part B of that is, if I was asking you to bring one recommendation in the report, what it would be? I know it's a challenging question.
That brings to mind something that I had thought about, strategy to begin with, and strategy sometimes tending to be based on a reaction to what's not there, or a reaction to to what is, and that focus more on the sort of outcome that you want before you've considered the process and what's needed to be put in place in order to achieve the outcome. Were you wanting to come in?
I was going to say, just even with our PSP, the funding that we've got from the Department of Justice there was to address the issues of substance misuse and mental health. Now, in saying that, that's relatively new funding, so I think that's a change, and we're heading in the right direction along with the Department of Justice. They're listening to us, they're listening to what we're going and saying this is actually where we need to focus this money on, and it is making a big difference. And they're also being more flexible with us, and even although this is a pilot, I know they don't like calling it a pilot, but it means though we can nip and tuck it and change it as we see fit over the 2 years to hopefully get the best outcomes coming through. So
based on the evidence of what we're seeing in the process.
I mean, just if I can finalise, just the final comment, just to answer your question, really it is about targets for all departments in relation to the action plan, in relation to the department strategy that they're going to bring forward. Very, achievable and feasible targets, with the understanding that there needs to be a commitment to invest to save in the long term. And it's not just investing for financial purposes, it's investing in the future of Northern Ireland.
Can I come in again, just as a reminder there? As I said, I think in my statement there, this doesn't sit within the Department of Justice, and I think that PSP project proves that. The Department of Health should be on board, the Department for Communities should be on board, but they're not, and as a result, we're funding that from our own reserves to prove that this is meeting the needs of our communities and making communities safer. So I think, as Fiona said, each department needs to sign up to a proper action plan with smart objectives, and they need to be held to account on that. And although the Department of Justice leading out on it, we need buy-in from every department.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, just one quick one from me that occurs to me as a result of the evidence. So you mentioned gaps there. You talked about the Greater Belfast area, and there was other gaps identified. Cross-border, so where I represent our community is Tyrone and Monaghan. Other parts of it will be Fermanagh and Cavan, Donegal and Derry. Are we cooperating effectively in terms of reoffending in that sense?
Yes,
offending and reoffending?
Yeah, obviously Extern is all Ireland, so we have obviously bail support within the ROI, which is working with the Department of Justice down there, but there's also great opportunities for cross-border working as well as cross-border funding, which obviously ticks a box as well. And I think that's what we're good as well. So we can apply for the funding, work with the Department of Justice, or work with the department, save them money. There's lots of opportunities. Peace money as well. Extern had the Positive Learning Project up in Derry, which was cross-border, and it was bringing offenders from across the border, which was quite hard to do. Works both ways, I must say, though. So they were coming into Derry, and it was skills, it was education, it was employability. The problem with that, again, though, with peace money was it came to a cliff edge. It came to an end, and there was nothing to keep that going. So although we had built that and established that for 3-4 years, it came to an end and that was it. So we're always looking out for opportunities, and we've got Creative Ireland funding as well, which is bringing young people up from Dublin and Drogheda up. It's like a creative arts project as well.
Geared towards young people who are at risk of offending and reoffending.
So there are things are happening there.
So yeah, and that's good, and that's good to hear that. But are there gaps there that create frustrations or loopholes within which people either miss or avoid the work?
It's a postcode lottery. Yeah, certainly quite a lot of the things that, as we said, are Belfast centric, because that's the majority of where obviously the bigger numbers are. But some of our services and some of the services from across Department of Justice, even with the community, disposals and stuff like that, it's a postcode lottery. So we would need extra funding to be able to hopefully roll it out across, so everybody has the same opportunities to go to the same services.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just go across to the Treasury Officer of Accounts. Stuart, do you have any comment?
Chair, I think it would be remiss not to mention from a Department of Finance perspective, just to thank the witness panel for their comments today, both in terms of this inquiry, but also in terms of the challenges, the funding challenges that the sector face. I think I made a comment last week about the opportunities that a multi-year budget provides for departments and ALBs. Yeah. I think when we think about the cliff edge issues and challenges that our voluntary sector face, I think my minister is determined to deliver on a multi-year budget, and I think hopefully that will be the case for this sector in particular.
Thank you. And I'll come across to our auditor, Dorena. Nothing further. Okay. Okay, well listen, thank you. It was a very, very interesting session. I have to say very, very educational and informative. I have to say that issue about all departments working together and contributing has come across strongly, but I just wonder at times, do they understand how much they stand to benefit from all of this work? And I think that's maybe part of what we need to, because they will all benefit, and that's the spirit within which they should be contributing. I was struck by the phrase around somebody being a victimiser or potentially a victimiser today and a victim tomorrow, or the other way about. And I suspect that happens not even, but all in the one day at times.
Yes.
That's how and it is worth bearing that in mind. I have to say. And the other thing, and I think this is the final thing, is to me, it strikes me very strongly that as finances get tight, and the fact that you get this drift away from preventative work into more management of resources, and actually it's the entirely wrong direction of travel. The more difficult things are, the more you should be focusing on the preventative type of work and the benefits that prevention can derive. And I think we're in a bit of a loop of that defensive budgeting in a sense, and we need to get ahead of that. Yeah. And a lot of these reports we're dealing with are telling us the same thing in many respects. So I want to thank you for your contribution to the inquiry, and we'll pick up the evidence that we've heard today, and hopefully that will be reflected in our report. Thank you.
Chair. Thank you. Thank you very well. Thank you.
Chair, didn't mean to leave out Armand Louth, by the way. In that.
What did you say?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you all.
Yes. Armand Louth, me and you, mate.
Okay, members, so we're now going to move into closed session. So I'll just ask the clerk to bring us into closed, please.
Senate Chamber. Sound. 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 Senate chamber, 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 Sound. Senate Chamber. 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 Sound. Senate chamber, 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 Sound. Senate Chamber. 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 sound, Senate chamber, sound, Senate chamber, sound, Senate chamber, sound, Senate chamber, sound,